everyday thing. It's an everyday thing. It's an everyday thing when you let your nuts hang.
Officer Tatum, you personally interviewed, you traveled to Mississippi, from my understanding, to personally interview one of the young men who left the island without Nolan. Why should the public trust whatever account is coming from them right now, in your estimation, based on what you've learned? First things first, I shouldn't say that. First things first, what did you deduce from the conversation you had from one of the friends that was with Nolan Wells? What did you take away from that you'd like the public to know?
Well, Stephen A., I want to make sure this is clear. I actually spoke to all the boys that were being accused. I spoke to family members. I spoke to also their attorneys. It's just that the one young man had the, I wouldn't say courage, because others had reasons why they didn't want to come on the camera, but he was able to come on the camera, and I interviewed him. And I also interviewed another young man who was black, who was there, who had his own personal accounts of what happened. I'm not asking people to believe or not believe. I just wanted to give people the information. So nobody had heard from the young boys. Nobody had heard their accounts. And a lot of misinformation was put out there, some intentionally, some maybe not intentionally, but it was very detrimental and not conducive for the investigation into Nolan Wells' death. It was punitive. They came out and started with race. It had to be something nefarious because these boys are white, for any other reason. So I wanted to go out and hear the full story. And what I deduced from the interview and talking to everybody is that these young boys had nothing to do with what ended up happening to Nolan Wells. And also they were best friends. I mean, these kids had so many pictures, so many text messages of them being closer to Nolan than any other friend group. And also one thing that shocked me was that this was an island, not secluded, not an island with 5 or 6 people on it. It was an island where there was thousands of people there, hundreds of boats, and also a lot of people could verify the statements that was made from some of these young men. So I really wish that we could have started at a point to say, what happened to Nolan Wells? Let's work together as a community. Let's talk to these young men, talk to other people, and let's find out what happened to Nolan instead of jumping the race.
I think that's what people have been trying to do. They've been trying to find out what happened, but nobody's talking. And since when nobody talks, then people start to be like, well, why y'all ain't talking? And now people lawyer up and people start to, delete social medias and stuff like this, and then brings up more suspicion. Now, we're going to get into more. I don't know why race was brought up into this. And I tell y'all, I don't think race should be brought up until we know that it was an actual racial crime. Like if we know it's a crime and we know it was because of race, like even the Austin Metcalf and Carmelo Anthony, I don't think it was about race. I think it was about bullies. But because Carmelo's black and he had a knife, well, we know then that's when it became about race. He's a thug with a knife and he carries a pocket knife to school. What kind of thug carries pocket knives to school? That's when it became racist. When the racist is getting into it, that's what makes it racist.
Officer Tatum, how do you know that it was misinformation that was put out there? How did you come to the conclusion that something was misinformation? Explain that. Is it just according to their account or something else?
No. Initially, I knew it was hogwash because when Al Sharpton and them got on TV, they automatically made an inference to say, well, it was something that had to happen because these kids were white. It was one white kids with one black boy. I mean, that there's no evidence to project that unless you believe every white person is nefarious in their dealings with black people. And so I thought that was suspicious on his face. And then they said that Nolan was the only black kid. He was not the only black kid. Many of his black friends were also at the island with him. So, some of those things that started to come out, I knew that they were not being truthful about what happened.
Charles, your thoughts, your response to what Officer Tatum just said.
I don't necessarily know that the initial statements about Nolan being with some of his white friends is entirely afactual. I also don't know that it is a nefarious statement in as much as these are facts. He was with a number of different white boys or a number of different boys who are white. I think that the problem with what Officer Tatum has just pointed out is that there is an underpinning of race when you're having a conversation about the types of things that happen and have happened to black boys and black people in Mississippi, such that it cannot be summarily dismissed. I did not necessarily jump to any conclusion, but the history of what race relations have been in Mississippi and how we have not necessarily been safe has caused me to take a special look at this case. It doesn't mean that I'm accusing anyone of anything. It doesn't mean that I do not believe in finding the process. But at the same time, I am not going to ignore the facts, which you just pointed out. These are facts. He may have been with other black people, but we have seen the pictures, we have seen the photos. There were a number of people who were gathered out there for the July 4th holiday, but Nolan Wells was with 3 boys who happened to be white. Those are facts.
He was with, but the thing is that it's facts without context. He was with more than just 3 white boys. That's the problem. There was over 20, 30 kids that got on 3 boats, and they all went to the island together. They didn't just travel with Nolan and just these 3 boys. Many of the boys that they're accusing, including Warren, wasn't even on the boat with Nolan when Nolan went out to the island. So some of those things were mischaracterizations of what actually happened. And the thing is that I don't think it's fair to say, because history has shown in part that white people or black people have had injustices, that all of a sudden you project that into a new situation. Black people have done nefarious things to other black people. Does that mean that you automatically jump to saying, oh, black people must be wrong in this situation? You know,
that was a dumb analogy, because if black people do something wrong to somebody, there's only another black person to blame. But I do know, I somewhat understand what he's saying, and I'm not saying I agree, but I agree, like, to an extent, about there being other people. We don't know all the facts, but if you can talk to both sides of the story, listen, as much as this dude has been involved in this situation, he should damn near be the lawyer to those boys, because apparently he knows more than any of the investigators. And it's not like these kids or their parents are talking to the media to get the truth out there. They're trying their best not to put the truth out there of what happened. Like, there was an incident that happened in Oklahoma City up at Lake Arcadia where some kids were shot at. Like, a bunch of, like, over 100 rounds were shot, and they was having a party, like a party at the lake. And there was so many stories. There was Snapchat videos. There was, just Instagram videos, people going live on Facebook. There was all type of information out there about this situation. So you telling me that everybody's being on the hush about this? No, people want answers. And since there's so many people out there, you telling me out of all 30 people, nobody's willing to talk and nobody knew where Nolan Wells was? That's the problem. And so is it because that he's black? Probably not. But if somebody is in trouble or somebody does have information, could that implicate them in something bigger, which is a crime? And that's what they saying. But I don't know. But Officer Tatum continues to defend. Let's see.
Because he had his black friends there too. And why nobody's questioning them? Why nobody's saying, why didn't the black friends rescue him? What did the black kids know about Nolan? And many of them said that they saw him last when the white boys had left at 4:30. So I just think that the race should never be interjected. No.
Okay, so why you not over there talking to the black kids? Like, if your black kids said it's last, then we need to. Where's the investigation to ask them? When's the last time you seen them? Who? Because if nobody has this information, only Brandon Tatum has this information for God knows who knows why. But only he has been able to talk to the kids. Only he has had an interview with the one that wanted to speak. So with all this information, and he's definitely spinning the narrative to get it off of them. He will do whatever he can to save a white man. He will do whatever he can to save a white man. I'm telling you, I don't want to disrespect the man, but he will do whatever he can to save a white man.
Nolan's friends told me, and they proved to me that they were really close to him and they were some of his best friends. They said Nolan would have been incredibly upset at the way people are framing his death and going after his friends with no evidence.
Well, here's the
Officer
thing.
Tatum, hold on, Charles. Hold on, Charles. I would say this to you, Officer Tatum. I get where you're coming from. And by the way, I appreciate the context and I appreciate the reporting on your part because numerous reports that I had read was talking about how he was the only black. He was a black kid with a few white boys. And you articulating that fact is very, very important. I think that's important and fair to point out. But
why is Officer Tatum the only person that said it was multiple black kids out there? And why hasn't there been any other black kid that came forward and said, I was out there with him. I seen him. The only reason why the friends are the ones who were questioning is because why would you leave your friend on an island? Then we start to ask questions.
what do you say to folks that will ask this kind of a question? He's on a boat, he's on an island, and according to numerous reports, he talked about staying behind and traveling back with a different set of company. Yet his car keys and his phone was left on a boat that he had traveled to those guys with. So what teenager do you know is saying he's staying someplace, but he's going to leave his car keys and his phone on the boat with the guys that he arrived at the island with? That does seem a bit suspicious, particularly when the guy's mother, Nolan Wells' mother, had to use some app to locate the phone, and it was something that wasn't given back. These are reports. I'm not pretending to.
This is some very good details that he's about to talk about, and it kind of makes sense. It do make sense, not it do make sense.
No, Officer Tatum. These are what the report said. What do you say to that?
And this is where I feel like Benjamin Crump and them should be sued for them putting out this information without facts. Let me point the facts out. Without context, it sounds bizarre. But when you put it in the context that a lot of people left their phones on the boat that left. Many kids came to get their phone after they left the lake. Nolan was with a girl. It's not shocking that Nolan would have said, hey, man, you guys had to leave, because they had to leave in an emergency situation. It wasn't like they had time to prep and everything. The boat was sinking, so they had to go. And they told Nolan, get on the boat, get on the effing boat, man, let's go. And he like, nah, I'm finna hang out with this girl. I saw evidence of that, and others who had sent messages that I read that said that they asked Nolan to go and he didn't want to go. Now, a lot of people left their phones on the boats because they're sitting in chest deep water, and it's a bunch of people out there. The reception is not very good. So most people did not have their phone with them. Now, the phone and the keys situation, people need to understand the context. Nolan never brought his keys with him because they were on a boat driving 7 miles out to an island. His keys had always been at the residence where his car was. So when the guys go back, they text Nolan's mother. This is where it ticks me off. They showed me a phone call where immediately the first phone call that was made concerning Nolan was Warren called Nolan's mom, and she hung up the phone on him the first time because she didn't know who he was. The second call, he told her, hey, Nolan haven't come back. Do you know, have you heard from him? And then they called the Coast Guard. So his mother was very much aware that they had Nolan's phone. His mother did not have to track the phone through Life 360. His mother didn't come get the phone. Another parent of a black kid who was out there with Nolan came to get her son's phone and Nolan's phone. So why didn't Al Sharpton or any of them ask these boys what happened, have them show evidence, and then present it to the public? And it's because I think they wanted the race bait instead of trying to find out what happened to Nolan.
Do you know hold on, Charles. Do you know whether or not Al Sharpton and those guys had asked to talk to the kids and the kids refused to talk to them? Do you know whether there's any truth to that?
They told me that they haven't heard anything from Al Sharpton or anybody that tried to contact them. This is what they told me. Now, They showed me messages where parents had communicated and reached out to Benjamin Crump, his team, and said, we would love to communicate with you guys. Any questions you have, we want to talk to you guys so you can get the context. Also, they messaged Nolan's mother multiple times about communicating and saying, hey, if you need anything, if you want to talk, we can give you the context of what happened. And nobody reached out to these boys. And
he says that I don't know why that would be hard to believe, But why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't the attorneys of Nolan Wells speak with the other? But I know why, because they might be trying to sue him, or they might be trying to, there's reasons why they wouldn't talk to them boys. Because if in the case that something did happen and they talked to them and they told them the story of what happened, I think because it's a criminal investigation, they probably aren't allowed to talk to them. Like, I wouldn't speak to you without a lawyer anyway. And like, if y'all were accusing me of doing something to Nolan Wells, why would I speak to the family through their lawyers? I would speak to my lawyer in a controlled environment to where my lawyer can be like, you can say this, you can say that. Don't say this, don't say that, because you don't want to incriminate yourself. Even if you didn't do anything, you still want to have a lawyer. You don't want to just be like reaching out, be like, hey, yeah, I could tell you the whole story, unless it's like something that can help you like exonerate yourself from this. And you should be talking to the investigators, which I'm pretty sure they have been, and the investigators are not finding nothing. But I think what Benjamin Crump and Al Sharpton is saying is that there's not enough being done in the investigation to find out more of who was on that island and who was around, who's the girl that was involved, who's this other black kid that y'all say was on there. But no, you can look on social media, you can look on the news site. There's not one statement, there's no video saying, oh, here's a statement from the other black kid. Like, not only a statement, where's the video? Where's something? If I seen him, like, say that. But I don't believe that part. I don't believe that another black kid came out and just said, oh, I seen him. Yeah, I seen him. Because it was only two of us. I seen the other black kid. But if there's another black kid, why don't we have a name? Were they friends? Did he actually know him? Or does he know that he was there? How does that other black kid know that he seen him at the time that that Nolan's friends had already left? They said there ain't no cell phone service. Nobody really had phones. Everybody left their phones on the boat, according to Tatum. So how could you determine all this stuff?
Saw evidence of this, which is what frustrated me about this in the first place.
Charles, floor is yours.
So here's the thing, Officer Tatum, we're not going to litigate the facts on here from one side of someone who's had an opportunity to talk to a sample size of people who were involved in this investigation. You and I know just as well that the real issue here is that the people who conducted the investigation, i.e. the Mississippi Sheriff's Department, who've talked to over 60 witnesses in this case, have not yet presented that case or their findings to a grand jury, and they've been extremely tight-lipped with respect to what they have found and what it is that they know. Where I'm going with this is, regardless of who you may have spoke to, who Benjamin Crump and Al Sharpton may have spoken to, what information they have had, we are all trying to piece this together. And so it is equally as unfair to present a certain set of facts as if this is the final context of things, when in reality, we don't know. What I will say about the overall situation is that for me, as a civil rights attorney, I am looking at this and I am saying that there needs to be a greater sense of transparency from the Sheriff's Department, because they are the ones who have spoken to most of the parties who have been involved in this case.
Not only is this guy a civil rights attorney, he's also he used to be a prosecutor also, so he knows his thing. And I want to get to a part where Officer Tatum is trying to tell him. So Officer Tatum looks at things from an officer standpoint. The officers see things from the beginning into the investigation, and they hand with their investigation over to the DA with their findings in the case. It's up to the DA to prosecute, which they have to have all the evidence. Or if they're going to prosecute, they have to have all the evidence. In this case, what he tells Officer Tatum is what the prosecutors need and what they need to find to know if they're going to prosecute somebody. And if they're not getting the information, then they can't prosecute somebody. And that's what his defense is saying that the detectives and the police, the sheriffs, they're not doing their jobs to get all the evidence to the DA. And what Officer Tatum is saying is there is no evidence. Nobody knows anything. So basically what he's confirming. So let's get to that.
Let me tell you where I disagree with you fully. As a former police officer, and I was a PIO, I dealt with all of these things. The police department is not an injustice when you say there's a lack of communication or transparency. The police department cannot put this information out there when you still have suspects at large. If they go and release some of this information and show their hands of what they know and don't know, then potential suspects will begin to destroy evidence. They'll start hiding. They'll start cleaning stuff. You don't want to give that information out to the public until you know for a fact that you've been able to communicate with every suspect that's out there. If you start putting out the autopsy prematurely, and it shows blunt force to the head, strangulation to the neck, then the people who have done this are going to make sure they hide the murder weapon. They're going to make sure they get their stories together and say, no, I didn't hit him in the back of the head. You don't want to project those things too prematurely. So there's no issue with transparency. And I'll say this: the reason that I'm talking about Al Sharpton and them is because the first thing that they said was that he was there with white boys, therefore there had to been something. And then it goes back historically. Some of them compared this to the young man.
I've heard very different messages from them when they have said we cannot assume that this is racist. But we cannot assume that it wasn't. So I'm going to correct you there.
Let me jump in here.
Who's that, Charles? Hold on. Charles, who said that? Who said that?
Literally during his eulogy, Al Sharpton said, we cannot assume that this was racist, and he said, we can also not assume that it wasn't.
Let me take your time. Take your time. Hold on, guys.
I don't like how Tatum always trying to interrupt people when they be talking. Like, he just try to overtalk. Every episode we watch of Officer Tatum, he tries to overtalk somebody when they're making a point. He just want to step in and, like, if you start making a point, he'll try to correct you. Like, whatever he's saying is not right. Like, if he's telling you what Al Sharpton said in the eulogy, Officer Tatum just said, "Oh, it's about race. It's about race." But no, then he just said, "No, it's not about race. But if it is about race, we're gonna find out." That's it.
Yeah, guys, take your time. Ain't nothing getting edited out. Don't worry about it. Trust me. All of it is. I'm not editing a damn thing. Go ahead, Officer Tatum. Floor is yours.
Well, let me interject. When you are looking for justice for your child in a criminal case, meaning that somebody committed a crime against your child, why do you go out and get a civil rights attorney? These Benjamin Crump and them are known for going after these cases specifically in injustices against black people.
Let me
Officer Tatum, let me try it first.
Okay, go ahead.
No, that's fair. No, that's fair, Charles. Go ahead.
I'm a former prosecutor. I'm a civil rights attorney. Please understand how these things work. At the end of the day, when you're talking about quote unquote justice, the first reason why you get someone like Benjamin Crump is because he's a person who has experience with wrongful death lawsuits.
Black people.
So it's not about black people. No,
it is. Benjamin don't represent white people.
Please talk about that is completely false. That is
Show me
completely
when was the
false.
last case he represented
I'm not
where he
here to
supported
do
white people?
I'm not here to do your research for you.
No, you the one
Benjamin
said
Crump,
it. I'm telling you that it didn't happen.
But Benjamin Crump has a long standing.
But you don't know if it did happen. Like, he would just be talking. He hates black people that much.
Career of supporting people of all races and ethnicities when it comes to the violation of their civil rights.
Give me one.
As well as personal injury. So please let me answer your question.
Go ahead.
The reason why you get a civil rights attorney is because, number one, Benjamin Crump has extensive experience when it comes to wrongful death suits. Number two, in this situation, it is possible that there may be an element that Nolan Wells' civil rights were violated and that something may have happened to him because of his color, which is why you get a civil rights attorney. A civil rights attorney. And so that is the answer to your question.
It's about
As
color.
a former prosecutor, You let the police and the sheriff's office deal with the notion of criminality, because that
let
is
me
one
chime in
thing
here.
that Benjamin Crump can't do anything about. But
Well,
when it comes
let's
to the
say this.
civil
Let's say
suit,
this, brother. Can I jump in
that's why
here?
you go get someone like Benjamin Crump. That's
Why
the answer.
wouldn't
Go ahead,
why wouldn't the kids
Brandon.
get
Jump
civil
in.
right? Like, for instance, people were saying, why did these kids lawyer up? Well, first of all, they didn't. Many of them didn't even have a lawyer. They went and talked to investigators and
Charles, let me chime in here. A statement of suspicion, some people would say, is an accusation. I understand from the legal, literal sense what you're saying. But talking amongst ourselves right now, when you say a statement of suspicion is not an accusation, that's not how people interpret a statement of suspicion. When you make a statement of suspicion, you're making an accusation. I mean, can we at least concede that, Charles?
What I will say in response to that, Stephen A., is to whatever extent there may have been statements of suspicion that were interpreted in that manner given early on, I think the record has been clear leading up to and during Nolan Wells' funeral that A, we don't know what happened, B, we won't rule anything out, and C, with respect to ruling anything out or not ruling anything out, we are not saying that this absolutely happened, but we are not saying that we are resting until we get answers.
Can I show you where this becomes biased?
Officer Tatum, let me come at you with this. What's wrong? There's a kid now. Okay, granted, you did your homework. You went out there and you actually talked to several of his friends. Props to you for that. But the bottom line is, this kid Nolan Wells is dead, and he was the only one that was dead. What's wrong with, again, in the state of Mississippi, not just with white boys, there were some dudes there as well, but he had other people there. He was the one that did not come home alive. Again, without an official accusation, what's wrong with having your suspicions raised and saying, listen, we need some damn answers. Something ain't right. He was a healthy young 18-year-old and he didn't come home alive. How'd that happen? What's wrong with that?
Now, if they had context and all the information, and then they led with that, I would have no problem with it. But let me tell you this right now, Stephen A. Smith and Charles, I'm telling you right now, if a white boy was on an island with his black friends, all black, and some white folks put on a camera, that something must be suspicious because the one white boy is with all these black dudes, and something may have happened. We know that people covering it up and everything because these kids black. Man, we'd be pissed off on that. Ain't no way in the world I'd accept somebody saying, you gonna blame these black boys for doing something to this kid just because they black? That's insane. And that's what happened in this situation.
So y'all don't think, but do y'all think that would happen? Anytime, man, it don't happen that often. Because it's not that many white kids that are around black kids. And if a white kid is around black people like that, these are people that he grew up in. These people accept him for who he is. And I just, in my opinion, we look out for people more than white people look out for black people. Like black people look out for white people overwhelmingly. And I be thinking it's like, damn, y'all always looking out for white people. But if the tables is turned, are they looking after you? Probably not. And the same fact is like, as much as Officer Tatum wants to put on the cape for the white man, if something happened to him, they're gonna turn on his ass too. And that's what I don't understand. I'll be like, man, I got white friends. I just left my white friend's house. So I ain't racist. That's what white people say when they not racist. Like, I just left my black friend's house. But but it's the truth. But the thing is, you got to make sure you safe. You got to make sure if the friends you with gonna make sure that you come home, they come home. Is everybody gonna be safe? If they not gonna look out for you like the same way black people will look out for you, then it's gonna be some suspicions everywhere. It don't matter if something happens. If something happens, somebody's gonna be suspicious, especially if it's just black on black crime. We already know it's cut and dry. People gonna be. But if a white boy got injured around a bunch of black people, they gonna have the feds tearing up everything.
If a white boy had been on that boat with 3 black boys, we would have seen a very different.
Where's your evidence?
We have
Give me a case.
History.
No history. You can say history can tell us everything.
We would have seen please let me finish my statement. We would have seen a very different.
Give me an example
of the Central Park, the exonerated 5.
Carmelo Anthony.
Well, first of all, 5 of them didn't go to prison. It was Central Park 5. Only 4 of them went to prison.
It was actually 6 of them.
Carmelo Anthony, perfect example.
And 5 of them went to prison. And I'm not.
And let me tell you how they went to prison.
I'm not going to quibble with you.
You won't give context.
One at a time, guys. One at a time. One at a time.
You asked for an example. I'm not going to quibble with you and say, well, they're called the exonerated 5 and only 4 went to. I'm not going to do that. The exonerated 5. You wanted an example. I gave you an example.
That's not an equivalent example.
And there are other example throughout history, starting with Emmett Till and going throughout the.
Are you comparing this to Emmett Till?
You asked me.
No. Are you
see? He's not listening. He's asking the question and then he's just, oh, you comparing it to Emmett Till? Just listen to what he's saying. You asked him for an example. Historically, when things happen to white people, there's an investigation, and that investigation towards Emmett Till was totally one-sided. When Emmett Till came to the South, Emmett Till was from Chicago. He had never been there. They said he whistled at a white woman, which he didn't, and the white lady later on admitted that on her deathbed, which I don't know why she would do that on her deathbed, if she even did it.
You're saying that this is equivalent to Emmett Till.
You asked me for an example.
So you're saying that it's equivalent.
Where if reversed.
Okay. I'm gonna let you finish.
I'm telling you, I'm giving you examples. What I'm telling you is that if the situation were reversed, we would have seen a very different investigation from law enforcement from the actual outset.
Let me interject.
We as a people, when it comes as a former prosecutor, because here's the thing, you're a former police officer, and that's fine. But when it comes to after arrests are made and how prosecutions are going, that's my space. That's my lane. So I'm going to speak from my lane. And what I can tell you is we do not typically enjoy the benefit of the doubt when it comes to probable cause.
That's not true.
I'm telling you as a former prosecutor, I'm not going to tell you what it's like to be
arrest people and I deal with prosecutors.
I'm not going to
tell you what it is. I have to interview with the prosecutors every time there's an arrest. And we have to go to trial.
Well, he's not saying that you don't know. Hold on. He's not saying that you don't know, Officer Tatum. What he's saying is from his perspective as a prosecutor, this is what he's bringing up. Now, I granted, I don't blame Officer Tatum. I don't blame Officer Tatum for bringing up, when, acting incredulous when he says you'd say Emmett Till. That's 1955. Al Sharpton brought up Medgar Evers at the funeral. That's 1963. So if Officer Tatum's going to look at it and say, that's what you're bringing up, I get where he's coming from in terms of the distance between then and now. But I also get where you're coming from, Charles Coleman Jr., when you highlight, listen, from an historical perspective, we're talking about, we've seen things like this before, and those are just names that we know. There's a plethora of names that we may not have known that have transpired throughout history.
That's a great fact. There are a lot of names that we don't know that injustices are happening. So we can't just bring up a case unless a case goes to Supreme Court, where now that case is being studied and it changes the law into why certain situations are handled. That has to be a case that goes to the Supreme Court, and those are the cases that get highlighted the most. These random cases where you see injustices happen, there's something that happen all the time. I actually watched one with a kid who accidentally ran. Well, he didn't accidentally run. He ran over a police officer running from the police, and the police was throwing out stop sticks, and he accidentally hit, and not accidentally, because he was, I don't know if he didn't do it on purpose, but he got a death penalty because he ran over a cop and killed him. The cop damn near died instantly. But the fact is, the case went from, it was either he could get manslaughter or the death penalty. Which one do you think they gave him? The death penalty, of course. So how can you have manslaughter on the table and the death penalty? Both of them was going to be considered life in prison because of the severity and killing the cop. But why put manslaughter on there so you can make him sit in prison versus the death penalty? He ended up taking the death penalty. But the thing is, he didn't take it. Well, he kind of took it. But thing is, there was probably some injustices there, but he didn't have the funds to fight the case. He didn't have the funds. Anybody with a situation like that, if they were high, they were drunk or anything, they would have not got off. They would have served a lesser sentence for that, based on them being under the influence and not in their right mind to actually know that they were making a decision to run a cop over when all he was doing was just avoiding the stop sticks. So there's injustices all over. We just don't hear about them all the time.
Or would ask the same question about you. Are you being fair? Because just like you have people out there that are elevating their level of suspicion and jumping to some sort of conclusion attached to guilt as it pertains to the death of Nolan Wells, you're coming across as somebody who's assuming these individuals that were in attendance with him were innocent because of your conversations with them, as opposed to not getting the full context the way Charles Coleman Jr. just highlighted.
No, yeah, I accept people saying that, but let me tell you that I saw proof. I'm not just taking somebody's account for it. And I'm not saying that nobody didn't kill Nolan. I'm telling you, the people that they put out on the internet and said these white boys were the only ones with him, and they're getting death threats. While I was out there, somebody sent the suspicious package to one of the boys' houses. They showing up at these boys' houses saying that they killed them. Go look on the internet and look at any these videos. They got the boy pictures up there saying they had something to do with his death. They're claiming they deleting text messages. All of this stuff is incredibly ridiculous. When I went out and I said, show me the proof then. Not just what you say, show me the proof. And these kids are showing proof. Their lawyers are showing proof that they had nothing to do with this. They have a Life 360 just like Nolan did. Their Life 360 showed that they were not on the island, or at least, you know, the young man that I interviewed, he wasn't even on the island. I saw his Life 360. So, I mean, these kids, they shouldn't have done these boys like this. They should let the investigation go and then make their accusations.
So you're highlighting specifically, you're not even saying, like you just said, you're not even saying that Nolan Wells, that some vile act, that he wasn't murdered. You're saying that these boys, those are the ones that are being unfairly scrutinized and villainized by this whole ordeal. That's what you're saying, Officer Tatum. Is that accurate?
Yes. So if that's true, and they didn't have anything to do with it, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with his friends not actually having something to do with that. And with the phone call, with the phones being deleted, I can understand, or not the phones being deleted, the phones being with him and the keys being with them, I can understand that. And the phone was actually picked up by another friend who actually gave the phone to the mom. So there's a lot of inconsistencies with this story, but I believe if the friends had nothing to do with it, which that could be true, the fact that there were more people on that island and he supposedly left with a girl, we'd find a girl, find who else was on that island and what happened. Because like you said, like something happened. If there was any sign of, like, if he drowned, like you could tell if somebody died before they go in the water or if they drown, because the water goes into their lungs. If they die before they go underwater, then there's no water in their lungs. So there's that. I don't know if they brought any of that up. I don't even know if he was found in the water. Was he found floating in the water or something? Then there's the case of, like, if there was something that happened on that island. Of course, there's no cameras, but who was there? There needs to be investigation. If they interviewed 60 people on that island and nobody's came up with nothing, there's reason to believe that there's any one of those people could have done something to him. You know, and it didn't have to be his friends. The only thing I see wrong with this situation is that his friends left without him. And even if he wanted to stay back, it's like, yo, I don't know if they said they could, I don't know if they said they couldn't find him or he told them, hey, I'm staying. I don't remember specifically what they said, but if y'all know in the chat, put that in the chat and we're going to go on to the next one. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comment section.